Hello yarn tubers, welcome back to Dana's Wanderlust Crochet, coming at you again from the Freightliner, my spiffy truck. I want to address Mikey from the Crochet Crowd's very cute little short the other day. Now don't go sending him hate mail, but he did refer to those of us who don't weave in our ends as we go as the bad witches. All done in fun. It's all done in fun, so please let's keep our sense of humor. But it did get me thinking about weaving in ends and how much I've learned over the decades. I'm not upset with Mikey. He has a very warm spot in my heart between him and Bella Coco. When I came back to crocheting, they ignited a new fire and new passion in me to continue to crochet and create great things. So I totally love me some Mikey, right? Okay, but don't go running away screaming, because I want to talk to you a little bit about weaving ends. I know you're like, oh, I hate weaving in ends. Some people are like that, but not everybody. First of all, I think weaving in ends, as you start to use more than just your 4 and 5 weight yarns, it becomes its own kind of art form. Now, he teaches a lot to crochet over your ends and just go on with your life. I appreciate that teaching. I do. I am a little more insecure about my ends popping out. So I have over the years developed a habit. If I'm using that kind of yarn, you know, a good squishy acrylic 4 weight or 5 weight, I'm not going to just crochet over my ends 5 or 6 stitches and then go on. I'm a little more neurotic than that. So I will crochet over 1 or 2 and then leave it out, and when I come back to weave in my ends later on, then I feel like I've already got, you know, the first pass done. But I have learned a lot about weaving in ends from Mikey. Weaving in, you know, 3 different directions. That came from Mikey. Thank you, Mikey. You know, I feel like that was the beginning of my process of how I've developed into weaving them in today. Now, I've also learned from Jane Crowfoot when I did her fruit garden blanket to wait a round or 2 before you weave in that end, because first of all, you want to make sure that you didn't make a mistake down below, and you need that end, you know, available and unwoven. Is that a word? I don't know. But, you know, in order to come back and fix a mistake, or like with a lot of those pretty intricate patterns, a lot of times the only place to really kind of hide stitches is going in through the top of the stitch, rather than, you know, weaving through the bottom of the stitch where it wraps around the row before. And she taught me and taught us that you don't want to do that right away, because you're going to be crocheting into the tops of those stitches. And when you're using a lighter weight yarn, say 3s and below, you need that space to get your hook in there and get your next round or 2 of stitches. Because especially with those squares with the fruit garden, you were dropping down a couple of rows sometimes. You had drop stitches. You were connecting chains down below. You were doing all kinds of things. So can you kind of picture in your head why I wouldn't want to weave in my ends as I go in that kind of a pattern? Okay, and then I was talking about, you know, going up into higher rows or rounds and finding out that you made a mistake down below, and you need to go back and fix that, so that this 2 or 3 rounds later you can crochet the correct number of stitches or crochet in the right way. And I have heard many OG experienced crocheters say, no, I do not weave in my ends until I am absolutely sure that that piece that I've made is done correctly. Because if you have to go back and unravel, you need those ends out there, right? Okay, there's another reason for not really doing it. I tend to, you know, go for a while and then I'll stop and weave in ends. Go for a while, stop and weave in ends. That's kind of my MO, but everybody has, you know, a different comfort level about how they do their ends. Now, right here, I'm going to put a little clip of me using a smaller needle and a needle threader in order to weave in ends on that really nice 3 weight Happy Place yarn. when I'm weaving in ends on something that is pretty lightweight, like a 3-weight in this Happy Place yarn from TL Yarn Crafts, there are actually 3 weights that I would use my favorite Clover, you know, gold. These are great. These are wonderful for anything in a heavier 3-weight, 4-weight and above. But below that, I use cross stitch needles. And sometimes the eye just isn't big enough to use some cross stitch needles. So I order these needle threaders, and these help me pull it through the eye. Sometimes I need it, sometimes I don't. And for this particular project, because it is such a nice, soft, and there's a little bit of open work here, I want to be pretty precise when I weave in the ends. So I have used a number 20 DMC needle, and I'll link these down below. But you can, like, I have a whole different, all different sizes of cross stitch needles in here to help me with this lighter thread, and I'll demonstrate. I left these 4 strands to show you how weaving in ends can be done in a way that doesn't bulk up your project. Like, you cannot see any bulking up anywhere where I have already done the ends. So here we go. Now let me grab my first one. And sometimes I'm able to flatten this out pretty good and get it shoved through there, but not like there. I probably could do it, but there are other times where I fail. So here we go. I just throw it through there, and I don't leave a lot on the other side of that threader. Let's get you some background here. You can see, you can kind of see that little wire on the threader. I don't leave a lot on the other side because this can be tough to pull through, and I hang on to this wire itself to pull it through, because otherwise they're cheap. That's why I got a whole package of them, but this wire can pull out of that plastic pretty easy. So now I've got it threaded through my needle, and this thing's pretty sharp. And this is the difference between, I mean, there's a difference between weaving and sewing in your ends. Weaving in your ends, like I would do with the big blunt needle, just go in and go between the stitches. Sewing means you go in and you actually pierce your yarn like that. Now I do a combination of both. You can see that these stitches wrap around the stitches below. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to weave in between these stitches on the left, but I'm going to feel it with my thumb and forefinger and kind of hold it straight so that I am actually piercing yarn in the sandwich there. And I'm going to come out in a way that actually goes in between some strands, because then I'm going to back up a hair. I learned this from Jane Crowfoot when I was doing the fruit garden. Okay, so now I want to kind of come back around another piece, and then I want to do the same thing here. I want to hold on to that set of stitches and kind of hold it straight so that when my needle goes through, it's behind this set of stitches, but it's actually piercing strands behind, which is helping it kind of lock in on itself. The fibers will lock in on itself. Now I'm going to come back again, and here I don't have like a grouping of stitches to go through. So I'm going to do the same thing that I learned from Jane Crowfoot, to come back here, and then I'm just going to kind of pierce. There's one right there I'm going to pierce. I'm going to pierce this one, and I'm going to come out here. I'm just piercing. I'm piercing those strands. Hold on. Okay, I got it rethreaded. Here we go. And I'm going to do that at least 3 times. And I always weave in multiples of 3 at least, because I was influenced in the beginning of when I started crocheting again by Mikey, and he got me weaving in 3s. So there's, I'm going to count that as my second pass. I'm going to kind of come around here. And then this little cluster here, I'm going to go through, I'm going to hold that between my thumb and forefingers and push through the center of that cluster, picking up threads as I go, but not piercing through the other side. You can't see this from the other side. And the size of needle you choose, of course, depends on how small you're going with the yarn. So, little dog hair from a dog I don't have anymore. So, as you can see, you cannot tell where the weaving in happens with this pattern. I'm going to bring you back out and look. And this is a beautiful straight edge. Sometimes when we weave in our ends, we tug just a little bit too much, and it puckers in, you know, the edge. These edges are straight. So that is how I weave in tails when I'm using a smaller weight yarn. So that's how I was weaving in ends on this 3-weight yarn for this wrap, and there's absolutely no bulking up in this. There's no distortion anywhere from how I was weaving in those ends. Now, let me tell you what really got me thinking about that was back when I was getting ready to do a channel relaunch, I asked all of you, what do you want to see more of? And our lovely yarn hag Ryan, Miss Beautiful, hey Beautiful, she was talking about tips and tricks and weaving in ends and not bulking up. And I started really paying attention that yes, a lot of times when I do my 4-weight acrylic, I'm just boop, 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 and it's a little bulked up there, whatever, you know, throw it on the done pile. Because Lord knows I don't get things done that often. So yeah, so I've really started paying more attention to bulking up. And you know, when Mikey talks about doing it in 3s, he talks about going in 3 different directions. Well, I just go back and forth and I snip it and go on with my life. Well, if I did really follow Mikey's advice, I would be doing it in 3 different directions. It depends on the pattern too. So bulking up has really become something that it's kind of like I've made kind of a game out of it. You know, how can I do this in the most invisible way possible? So thank you, Ryan, for getting me to thinking about that. And I think it's important, you know, especially if you're making something like I did last year and like I'm doing this year that is going to be judged, you know, judges' eyes and critique is going to happen. So yeah, I've really started paying attention to those kind of things. So anyway, I'm very happy with how the ends have disappeared on this piece that I revealed last week. And anyway, and I just want to say, what did you call me, Mikey? He is so cute. And I will link that short that he did down in the description box. And also I want to remind you, if you're watching this in, oh, where are we? March. This should be going up March, middle of March. There's probably a giveaway going on with that video from last week, spring seasonal Yarny YouTube hop for this kind of yarn. So check that out. If you're watching this later on, I hope you got some value out of it. Okay? Okay, I love you guys. Bye.